So, hello everyone. You're welcome to Grief to Grace, powered by Echoes of Life, and I am Ruth Hepzibah. So, today we'll be looking at a lot of stuff. We have an inspiring and a truly inspiring guest in the house named Colleen Sturgis. Colleen is a married woman who is married to Rick for 31 years, living in Nashville area along with her other children and four grandchildren. Her story is one of profound grief and ultimate grace, showcasing the power of faith and resilience in the face of immense loss. From a turbulent childhood to experiencing heartbreaking personal losses, including the death of close family members, and her own struggles with addictions and suicidal thoughts. Colleen has worked a part that many might find unimaginable. Her testimony is a powerful reminder of how grief can be transformed into grace through faith. Colleen, thank you for joining us today.
Thank
As
you.
your incredible journey with us. I'm
Mm.
so excited to have you in the house today, Colleen. So, how are you doing?
I am doing well, and thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, thank you. It's an honor to have you here today. And we are looking at a lot of stuff because a lot have you've been through just so much. And when I was reading your whole story, I was like, gosh, how many people can actually survive this? Very few people can. So I'm
Mm.
so happy and glad that you were able to find grace at the end of it all. So can you please start by sharing a bit of your early life in Lewiston, Maine? What was
Yes,
growing up in a large family with six siblings and all that?
yes. Well, I was born in Lewiston, Maine in 1962, so a long, long time ago. I was the sixth out of seven kids to a large Irish Catholic family. My mom was amazing, honestly. My dad was a long haul truck driver, so he drove most of the week. He was gone, and my mom had to take care of all of us, and she did a great job. Ran a restaurant. She was quite the woman. She was my track coach. I had a really good, if you will say, childhood in my mind. I thought it was great. And then at 14 years old, something switched in me. I had been raised Catholic in a Catholic church. And for me, this is it's not everybody's story at all. But for me, I couldn't handle the pressure of being raised in such a religious environment because I never measured up. I was never good enough. Everything I did, I was going to get punished for. I had to say Hail Marys every week because I was such a bad kid. That's the way my mind took it, literally, in such young formative years. So being raised that way, and then with all of the brothers and sisters and the things that go on in family life, it was pretty hard not to think that you were the worst kid in the world.
I can
So,
imagine. Now you can go on.
at 14 years old, I ran away from home. I basically ran away from everything. I gave God the hand and I was like, I'm done. I can't impress you. I can't please you. There's nothing I can do that will make you love me. So I'm going to stop trying. So I gave him the hand on purpose at 14 years old. Ran away from home, took off, was into drugs and alcohol, serious alcohol. We used to steal it from the counter, and it was an on all the time thing. And we used to drink at the house, honestly. When my family would have parties and stuff, they'd have alcohol there. We would just drink it. Drinking became a way of life, and it became the way I could numb the pain of never measuring up. So I did a lot of it.
To steal
So
it
from
from the counter, and it was
part,
all the time thing. When my family would have parties and stuff, they'd have alcohol there. We would just drink it. Drinking became a way of life, and it became the way I could numb the pain of never measuring up. So I did a lot of it. No, you can continue.
okay. So at 14, when I ran away, I just started, like I said, did everything I could do wrong, just kept going. And there was just a lot of debauchery. It was just, let me find the darkest places I could go. And whatever drug there was, I wanted to use it, you know? And at 18, I joined the military. I figured if I was ever going to do anything with my life, I would have to do it now. So I joined the army and went away I was in the army for 8 years. I could have periods of sobriety, but it was never lasted long. I did basic training, and then right after that, it was party capital again for me, just nonstop. I had many years of blackouts and not knowing where I was, what I was doing, and all through that. In 1998, well, actually, in 1982, I lost my dad. He died of cancer. And in 1988, I lost my sister, who was 29 years old, to cancer. Now I'm still out there in the partying mode. So there was no healing. There was no healing balm of Gilead in that. When you're away from God, there is no healing. So I was walking in all this unforgiveness, unhealing, all these hurts of my past. And in 1989, my mom died, and that was it. At this point, I'm shutting down. But that's when I came to this place in my heart and mind where I knew that I had to do something different. Something had to change. So in that period of time is when I moved back. I got thrown out of the military because of my drinking, if you will. They basically said, we can't rehab you anymore. And I got sent home. So I went home and started working as a nurse. I'm also a nurse at home, and I was able to just keep it to weekends, keep the party into weekends, keep it at bay just enough, you know. But I was a mess. I was an absolute mess, full of grief, shame, pain. I had been molested at the age of 5. I had terrible, terrible nightmares and things that would happen to me that whole time, my whole life. I'm 28 years old, and I'm sitting in an apartment in Lewiston, Maine, and I'm just done. I was done with life. So I was going to attempt suicide, knew what I was going to do. And I'm like, okay, this is it. I'm finished. But I bought a 50-cent picture of Jesus and I hung it on my wall in my apartment. And that night, knew I was going to kill myself, knew it was over. I wasn't going to try anymore. I'd lost all my family members. Now my 48-year-old brother had died in that time. And I'm just tired of death all around me, you know? So I'm screaming at a picture of Jesus at 2 in the morning in an apartment in Maine. And I'm saying, why are you doing this to me? Why? Why would you do that to me? Why do you hate me so much? You took all the people that ever loved me. You took them all from me. So I was blaming God in this moment, blaming Jesus. But I just knew I was so angry inside. I just wanted to tell him before I went. So as I looked at that picture and I screamed at him, I fell asleep. And it was the first time that I had slept in over 14 years. I fell asleep. It was the most beautiful thing. But when I woke up the next day, I never touched another drop of alcohol and I never touched another cigarette or any other drugs. I started running again and I knew something happened, but I didn't know what it was.
I can understand why you said you wanted us to start with the opening psalm, which is Psalm 18, 20 to 24. Do you want to talk about that?
So that is the psalm that I have been using, and I do a lot of recovery work now, and I use that with my women all the time in recovery because it was me. I was surprised to be caught. It was me that he caught. You know, that whole psalm talks about how God lifted me, caught me, and lifted me above my enemies. You know, that psalm means the world to me because he used that psalm to bring me out of the funk of my life through the years. This is afterwards. This is after I had that encounter with Jesus. And I wasn't even sure what that encounter was that night, you know? I've been walking with him for 33 years, and for 15 years, I didn't really have a knowledge, if you will, or a revelation of Jesus. I just knew that I was different and I knew that he was involved. But 15 years into my salvation now, it's 15 years of walking with him, and my 17-year-old son was killed in a car accident. And then I had the encounter of encounters with my God and my Savior. I walked through that year knowing that I was just finished. That I got nothing. There's nothing I can do with this. All this pain, all this grief. I'm done with it. I have nothing. But you know what? This time I knew that there was a God that would show up, and He did. My God, my King, He showed up. And for a year, I just felt like I was held, like He had me in His arms, and He held me. And
Yeah.
in that time, it was beautiful. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever been through. And in that time, I had a revelation of Him like never before. It, it changed everything between us, you know? And that's the psalm that He used for me was Psalms 18. And He said, I've got you, is what He was saying over and over. I've got you. He caught me because He loved me and He didn't let me fall to the depths of despair that I should have. It's the worst pain you can ever go through to lose a child. And I'm not going to make light of that. It is the worst pain, but there is healing. There is healing on the other side of it. It was a long, long season.
Yeah, it is a long season, especially when you have to lose a loved one. I can really resonate with you when you talk about losing a child. You know, when I lost my
Mm-hmm.
husband, my mother in law got the news and she couldn't survive it. In fact, she
Mm-hmm.
died the same day. So most times when I hear people say, I lost my child and they are still alive and breathing, it's the grace of God all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because we shouldn't take that for granted. I have seen people die of grief because, especially when they lost their children and they cannot
Mm-hmm.
take it, they feel God has really deserted them. I really feel so much of your pain. I know how much you feel when it gets to that. But before we get to all that, you mentioned also that in the age of 14, you decided to turn away from the faith that you were raised in. Can you describe
Mm-hmm.
what led to that decision and how it affected your life at that time? And also how the choices you made during the teenage years, including running away from home and struggling with addictions, impacted your relationship with your family and your friend self?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, at 14, like I said, I'd gone through all the sacraments, if you will, of the Catholicism, and you know the first communion and the confirmation. I've been into all the youth groups, and I actually even worked at the rectory, taking care of one of the priests' mom for like 2 years. I in Catholic schools the whole time. And I just remember clearly asking once a Catholic priest, and I said something. I said, I'd like to read the Bible. And he said, you don't need to do that. You wouldn't understand it. And it was something in me from that moment on. It was like, I don't understand any of this, but if they're telling me I'm not even good enough to read the Bible, I don't want any part of any of this anymore. That must mean to me, is what it meant to a literal 13 or 12-year-old girl. It meant you're not good enough to read the Bible and you're just too stupid. And there was two lies that the enemy told me my entire life is that you're stupid and you're unlovable. I heard that in my head all the time. And that was just like a verification of that. And I just said, you know what, God, if you don't want me, I don't want you. And I gave him the hand and I walked away. I left it all there. And it impacted everybody. I mean, I lost my family, my poor mom. She tried so hard to get me back home, if you will, but my heart turned. My heart got so hardened and I just didn't care. I had no caring left in me. I felt like the world wanted to use and abuse me, and in my mind, so I might as well just give them all the hand and take whatever I can get out of this life, you know? So I was very, very hardened at 14 years old.
Wow, I can imagine. Because your story really touched me. When I read it, I'm like, we really need to talk about this because a lot of people drift away, especially when they have situations gripping them. And sometimes the actions we take personally, not you, the person that wants to take the actions, like you said, you spoke with a priest and the priest told you you cannot read the Bible. and
Mm,
understand it. He didn't know the gravity of what he was doing at the time and how much
mm,
it was going to take you away from Christ. If
right.
only we as Christians we can be more conscious of the words we put out to people
Mm,
and find a way in our heart to be able to explain more to people and encourage people in their faith. I think that would be so good. So
yeah.
when you were talking, okay, you want to say something?
Nope, nope.
Okay, when you were talking, also you talked about your whole story involves like significant losses, like the death of your father, your niece, your sister, your mother, your brother, your son, your brother. You know, just so much happening around you. How did all these losses affect you emotionally and spiritually during that period? And how did you cope with the overwhelming grief? Because there are a lot of persons that are watching and they are going to see this video and they are in these shoes. Like today, I got a message from someone and were like, Ruth, I think this is the best thing I have seen in recent times. I have family members who have lost people. I have lost a lot. And in the last 1 week, we have lost three. So I can imagine how what this that kind of a person needs to hear, how they can actually navigate through all these things. So, how did
Mm-hmm.
you how did you your overwhelming grief have impact on your mental health, and how did it affect you emotionally and spiritually, especially during the period?
So the losses that I had before I was saved, if you will, before I knew Jesus, were so traumatizing. It sent me deeper into my addiction, so deep into my addiction. You know, like I was in Neu-Ulm, Germany, and I remember they took my blood because they thought I smelled like alcohol the next day. And then the commander called me in and he said, listen, he said, your blood alcohol is 3.0 today. He said, that tells me, wait, you were clinically dead last night. And I was walking around like there was not a care in the world. And I was performing, wasn't even at that time feeling good. So I went into that addiction so hard and so fast that it was beyond. It owned me. The addiction owned me. And that was the only way I could numb the pain. And all I could ever hear in my head was hair of the dog, hair of the dog. If you don't drink today, you're going to feel all of those emotions coming up. You need to drink. And that was what I heard. And I followed that voice all the time and I drank. So, but after salvation, once Jesus took the addiction out of me, once he delivered me from addiction overnight, all addiction, then everything changed. When I lost my son in 2005, it was the worst thing you could go through. And like I said, I just told him, I have nothing, God, I have nothing. And every time he would say, I got you. And I heard him. I heard him in my heart of heart. I heard him. And he said, I've got you. I've got you, and I will fix this. You can't do grief on your own. It does overtake you. It will overtake you. And for years, and on the birth, the anniversary of his birth or his death, it would still come back. And I asked Jesus one time, I said, what is this? I thought we've walked through this. And he said, it's a visiting grief. You don't have to accept it, but it's here. It wants you to accept it and to go into depression. And I was like, okay, so I need to focus on what God is saying and not what the world is saying. I understood. See, when my son died in that whole situation, it was a year. And at the end of the year, I knew that God was holding me. I could feel him holding me because I wasn't falling apart, right? And it felt like a numbing of my spirit, if you will, like he numbed me. I didn't need the alcohol this time. My God numbed me. You know what I mean? So I did not feel the depth of the pain that I knew I should be feeling. It was a year after that he died. I went to this church in Maine. It's where I lived, but it was like an hour away. It was up in Oakland, Maine, and there was a pastor there or a minister, and he was prophetic, and he said, there's a woman here and you've lost a son, and he said God wants you to write a book. Well, I had been getting emails for months saying, I want you, like I'll publish your book for free. And I'm like, I'm not writing a book. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. But God kept talking to me and telling me like what he wanted me to do with the pain. to do something like we're made in God's image, right? So we're made to be creative as God is creator. He made us to be creative. We all have some kind of a gifting and creativity. So he was trying to bring that out in me. He was like, I need you to write down. And I would read every time I'd read Jeremiah, Isaiah, son of man, write it down, write it down, write it down. And these verses would stick with me. And I'm like, I don't know what you're trying to say, God. And honestly, it irritated me a lot. I kind of got angry when I kept hearing it. People would come up to me and say, "Oh, that's a great story. You should write a book." And I'd be like, "Shut up. I don't want to write a book," and it was like irritating me. And I finally sat down and I surrendered to God after, and I said, "You know what?" I said, "I'm going to sit here." And I said, "I don't know why you keep saying write a book because I have nothing in me." And right away, God brought a memory to me of when I was in the third grade and the nuns had told me that I had run on sentences. And I just thought right from there, you're disqualified, you will never write. And I just never knew that was part of my gifting. That was my creativity because I always wondered, well, where am I creative? I don't do anything. I don't sing. I'm not musically inclined. Where would I have? And that's when God was showing me. He said, and as I sat at that computer that day, I said, I don't have that. Yeah, I don't have a gifting. And he says, I put it in you. And I said, what? You put things in people? And he says, yeah, I put it in you. You have a book in you. I need you to pull it out. And it changed my world. I mean, when you have that much grief and all you're feeling all the time is the negativity of life, and all of a sudden, the creator of the universe wants to tell you, wait a minute, I have so much more for you. Their assignment is over. They can't change their lives in any way right now. Their lives are done, their assignment is over, but yours is not. You are still here and you have an assignment. And if you will accept it, I will carry you through it. I will keep carrying you and nothing will overtake you. You just keep your eyes on me and I will carry you. And that resonated in my spirit, man. And I just knew from that point on, he has a purpose for me. He has a purpose for all of us. And I can't fulfill my purpose if I die with my loved ones who died. If I let my heart die inside of me instead of letting him revive it and bring new life from it, from where I lost life, I will see them again. I will see all of them again. But my assignment isn't done yet.
Wow, that's a powerful one. That's so powerful, really, because most times when you're grieving, like you said, most times it's better for you. That was why God was trying to talk to you about writing. It's better for people to do journaling because I think most times it brings out your writing ability and it develops other parts of you that you never knew you had. But if only we
Yes.
can listen more and hear from God, you'll be so shocked that what we thought we lost, we have them more than ever in our own selves. And I'm really so happy to hear that. And you have your book. What's it called?
I wrote two because I wrote the first one and it was called An Act of Grace. And it was my story my way. And then we moved from Maine to Tennessee, my husband and I, and our two youngest children. And he says, I need you to write another book. And I was like, no, we're not doing that again. I was like, that was so involved. Anyway, I sat down and he said, we're going to do it my way this time. So I wrote the second one. It's called A Shadow of the Things to Come. And it's the way God talked to me through the whole process. He talked to me through all of it. And he basically gave me the book and he showed me how to write from his perspective. So it's me and him in a conversation about all the trauma of my life and how he healed me through those conversations.
Okay. If we have links to your books where you sell them or how people can get them, you can send them in so we can put them in our podcast so people can actually have access to them.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have spoken about the journey of healing and forgiveness, and you have also talked about the emotional wounds from your past and how
Mhm.
you were able to heal from them. But what were some of those key steps that you took beginning with this healing process? And what can you talk to us about the moment you felt that God was asking you to do something different than you ever thought you could, that led to your forgiveness and that led to your healing in general?
Mm. Well, after my son had died, I was like I said, I was kind of in a fog for a while. And after a year, my son had been dead a year, and I went and that pastor said, I want you to write a book. And then that process started. But God said, I have one more thing I need from you right now. And I was like, what could that possibly be? Like, I thought I've given you everything. And he said, I need that memory. And I was like, I knew what he was referring to immediately, and I didn't like that memory. I had locked it away so far and hid it, and it was being a memory of being molested at the age of 5. And when he brought it up, he said, if you'll give me that one, I will change your future forever. And I was like, God, I will, because I know that every time I give you something, a piece of my heart, a memory, a hurt, a pain, you always give me something in exchange, and it's so much better than anything I could have done. So I'll give it to you. I said, but I don't even know how. So the next morning when I got up, it's me and him every morning, has been my since he saved me. Every morning it's me and him on the couch, 2 3 hours, whatever we can do. It's just me and him. I have to have him before I have the day. And that next morning, I got up and I said, what is it? I said, I don't even remember, God. I can't remember. And he said, he started to let the memory go through my mind. And I just remembered a little bit. It was like he opened the door of that memory in my heart. And as the door opened, he walked in with me. And right away, he said to me, you have a question. I said, no, I don't. And I started to get angry. I started to feel all the emotions of that room. And he said, you have a question for me. And I said, no, I don't. And he said, I saw it run across my mind like a back of a ticker tape on a plane. You know how the planes go with the advertisements across? It was just like that. And it said, where were you? Where were you? And I was like, I do have a question. I do need an answer from you. I need to know where you were, how that could happen, how you could allow that to happen to a 5-year-old girl, and you didn't do anything to stop it. And he said, that's the question. Now I get to answer it. He said, I was with you in that room, and I was with that man. And if I'd have gone against his free will, I would have had to go against the free will of every man, woman, and child alive, and no one would ever get to come to me on their own. But I knew this about you. I knew that this day was coming, this day right here, and you would give me that pain. And not only would I heal it in you, I would heal it in every woman who would ever hear you speak about it. I will heal it. And I knew that about you. And in that moment, all that pain left. And I was in awe. I was like, wait a minute. You knew that about me. You had faith in me in
Yes.
that moment. I didn't have faith in me. I had nothing in me. I was so unworthy in my mind. And when he said that, he said, I knew you would kick that to the curb and you would help every woman who would ever hear you to do the same and not let him hold him back anymore. So I need you to release forgiveness. And I'm moving you out of this situation. And that room is now being redone. And you will want to visit it all the time. So he healed that room in my heart once and for all.
Oh, they're so profound because it's one of
Mm.
those things we talk about every time. One of the things we use for our healing strategies here. That one thing you need to do is to forgive. Forgive
Yes.
yourself, forgive the people, forgive the
Mm.
situation. And that
Right.
only that, forgiveness is more about like accepting the situation. And with that, you can heal anything. You can be free
Mhm.
from anything. If you want to
That's
be
right.
healed and free from whatever sickness on earth, you need to learn to forgive. And I can
Mhm.
feel it. Like when you were talking, I could really feel when God spoke to me personally when He talked about forgiveness and taught me so much about forgiveness and why I needed to forgive myself, forgive the situation, and forgive the people that have offended me. And I tell you, from that moment till date, I don't even remember. The other day, my son was like, "Do you remember?" I said, "I can't remember." And he was trying to talk about it. I said, "I can't even remember," because that's one thing I know God has been able to do in my life. And I hope that
Yes.
this will be able to take help other people, because most people are dying from a lot of traumas, childhood traumas
Mhm.
that they've been through in their childhood, from their family, from friends, from people they trusted, and they've not been able to grow past that, and they've not been able to prosper, and it has limited them all the way in their lifetime. So
Mhm.
now that you found grace, and you
Yes.
moving forward, you've moved on, you've found grace, you've found faith in God. How have you been able to maintain your faith and
Mm.
continue to grow spiritually over the past 34 years since that life changing night? And what
Mm.
advice do you have for others who might be struggling with grief, shame,
Mm.
and the feeling of unworthiness?
Oh my, every single day of my life, I wake up with gratitude just because he healed me of so much, of so much. I can't do anything to ever earn that. It's total grace, right? I was a mess. I was a sinner. I just had so much garbage in my life and so much sin, and yet he came. God is real. And that's one thing I think a lot of people don't realize. Honestly, God is more real than the next thought that you have. He is more real. He is so real and he is so full of love and he is so for you. And that's not what we get all the time from like religion or, or our parents who were highly religious or, you know what I mean? We weren't handed the gift of knowing God, and the gift comes from knowing him, his word. I have to stress that his word is where I found most of my healing, almost all of it. I love his word. I love it. In the beginning was the word was with God, the word was God. It's the way we learn how he speaks. And once you learn his language, and then it makes sense in your mind, and then when you start to push against it, well, wait a minute, God, you let Moses see your glory. I want to see your glory. Your word says you're no respecter of man. And I know he laughs at me most of the time because I'm always asking for something. I'm always in that word shopping, if you will. Yeah, Nehemiah got a permit to build the kingdom of God. I want to build the kingdom of God. You're no respecter of persons. So this is how every single day, it's me and him in prayer. Where are we going today? How can we help people? Where can we find those that are lost so that we can bring them the news of you in a way that they can receive it tangibly, because God is real. He is real and he's for us. He's not against us. And it doesn't matter what your sins are. It doesn't matter how bad you are. I hear that all the time. You don't know what I did. Oh, honey, it doesn't matter. It's not a measure of sin that we're looking for. It's a measure of the grace of God to forgive all sin. And it is immeasurable, the grace that he has for us. There's no sin he can't cover. And once you realize that, what he's looking for is relationship. I love how it said in Genesis, when God came into the garden and they had fallen and they had sinned. And, the Bible and the way I've always heard it, like in the religious system was, when he came in and he said, who told you you were naked? you know like, where did this come from? Because Adam realized, and Eve, they covered up right away, right? They realized they were naked. But how I heard it was, who told you that I wouldn't cover your sin?
Hmm,
Who told you that? Who told you that no matter what you did, I wouldn't be here for you? I wouldn't love you? And the first thing he did was get an animal skin to cover their nakedness.
hmm,
But he's still doing that today. He still covers us. He takes care of that sin and cleans it out of us. He takes it away from us. And then he fills us with the beauty and the grace and the love and the peace that he has for us. You can't make this up. I'm telling you, Jesus, he wants to be your best friend. He is totally my best friend, and I don't want to do life without him. I know who I am without him. I'm never going back. I'm going to him. The kingdom of God is here and it's now. And we are part of that kingdom. We are part of his kingdom. He died to make us his kingdom citizens, his sons and daughters. And until we realize it, we're just floating around with no purpose. We have no family in our minds. And a lot of us physically don't have any because we have pushed them out of the way with our selfishness, and addiction is selfishness. And I know that you've already, most people who are addicts don't realize it, but it's, I got to take care of me is what it's saying. I got to take care of me. You don't know what I've been through. I understand that thought process because I had it the whole time. If this gets a hold of me, if these emotions come up, it's going to overtake me. I got to run to the drugs. I got to get numb now. And I know that, but it's a selfish thing. It means that you're cutting out those that love you. You're cutting out God, and you're not giving anybody a chance to speak to that broken area in your heart. God gave you that heart. He wants it healed. He wants you to bring it back to Him, healed and sealed with His Holy Spirit. You can't do that if you run from emotions.
That's true. Wow, that's very correct. So you've been married to Rick for
Hmm.
30 years and you have
Yes.
adult children and grandchildren. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, we talked to a grandma. And
Yes.
how has your journey of faith, healing, and forgiveness influenced your family life and your relationships? And what legacies do you hope to leave for your children and your grandchildren through your story and your testimony?
Mm. That is the best thing that I think we all have is our families and our relationships. We have 5 children. We have 3 still in Maine, and we have 2 here with us, and we have 6 grandchildren. No, actually, now we have more. Sorry, they keep adding to. I'm sorry, I'm losing track. My son and daughter-in-law had twins, and they had already have an 18-month-old, and now we have 2 little girls with them. And my daughter has is pregnant again, and she has a 15-month-old. And then we have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old. We have a grandson that just lived with us and graduated down here from Trevecca.
Oh,
So he's older. He's 22. And then we have we have a 6-year-old. So we have quite a few going on in our family. The legacy, I think that the only thing that we can ever give anybody is I think that the kids stand on the parents' shoulders. So if we go after our junk, our and get our healing from all of our past, all the stuff we carry, our abandonment healing that we got and then more. So they're starting at a hot, at a level where they're not coming in with all the bondage. I am a first, if you will, first generation Christian in my family. We had Catholics, for one generation, my parents before us, but I never really saw any evidence of salvation or grace in them. But my husband, it's the same way. I mean, our parents did the best they could with what they had. They were terrific people, but they just didn't know Jesus intimately. And now, because we've gone after our stuff and we have worked recovery, my husband works it too. He actually does a lot of men's groups. He's fantastic at what he does in bringing healing to men. So since we've gone after it, our kids don't have to go back after the same old junk that we dealt with. Now they're free. They get to start on a different level, if you will, of healing than we had, which I think everybody would, if you realize that if you could get your healing, your kids wouldn't have to suffer some of the same things you do because it's cyclical, it comes and it's generation after generation. My family was generationally alcoholic for years and years. And finally it got broke. We had premature death in our family, and that got broke. And it's cyclical. It just keeps going. And if it can, it will. And sin loves that. It loves to eat up the next generation, if you will. But if you tackle it in your life by allowing Jesus to heal it, then your kids don't have to start digging up all those old wells. They can start on the land that was already their inheritance, knowing it's their inheritance and knowing who they are in Christ. I think it makes a big difference.
yeah. Thank you so much, Colleen. Your story is a powerful testament to the formative power of God's love in our lives and also of the grace of God. And like
Mm.
we say, it's always from grief to grace. And you have been able to prove that you can move from grief to Grace. And I want to thank you for sharing your journey with us today. And it has been an honor to hear how you've moved from grief to grace and how your faith has brought healing and hope to not just you, your family, but to the whole world, to the women that you're touching their lives, to the men that your husband is touching right now, and also for our listeners, they need to remember that no matter how dark life may seem, I tell you, there is always hope and redemption through faith. And that is
Yes.
what we just heard. And if you want to listen and learn more about all these things, you can get Colleen's book. We're going to send the link. You can DM us and we'll get it to you. We'll put DMs and information on how you can reach Colleen. And also, we hope that you found grace in all these things that we've talked about today. So
Mhm.
you can purchase our book, my book, A Pen That Rewrites Grief. This is a journal and a devotional that can help you. It's a 60-day guide that can help you through grief. So it has interventions which I use that help me personally. This way things given to me basically by God when I was almost dying of grief and I didn't know what to do. My
Mhm.
kids didn't know what to do. But when we followed most of these things we've written here, I tell you, we found grace. And today I'm here talking about it. And also, we are encouraging you today to join us on Echoes of Life at www.echoesoflife.org. If you need to join a community of people who can help you, like a support group, then you need to be part of Echoes of Life. That is our grieving community where you can find support as much as you can. So you can check it out on our website, and I'm sure you will love everything. Also, we are offering coaching classes, and if you're interested in that, you can go to the website and you will find more information on that. So you can also join us on all of our projects and also join us on our live programs as they come up and on the podcast, which will be streaming on all platforms. I tell you, you will not regret ever joining us. Echoes of Life is the body that is powering Grief to Grace, and it is a 501c organization that is dedicated to supporting individuals through grief journeys. So I want to thank you again, Colleen, for being part of this show. I hope you had fun. I hope you understand that you really blessed a lot of souls, including mine, because
Mhm.
your story is one story that has given me so much hope. And I know that a lot of persons, when they listen to your story, they are going to find grace and see that, yes, somebody did it, and I too, I can.
Mhm.
Thank you for listening
Yes.
to Grief to Grace today. Colleen, do you have like one word, last word for our listeners today?
Yes. Don't quit. If you don't quit, you'll win. You will win in this battle if you just don't quit. Don't give up. Don't succumb. Just stand up and say, I can do this day. I got 12 hours and I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. And you keep doing that. And after a while, it gets easier and easier. Call Jesus into it every day and you will win.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Grief to Grace with Ruth Hepzibah. Thank you to our guest, Colleen Sturgis, for sharing the incredible story. And also, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Follow us on all of our social media platforms for updates and for more inspiring stories. Remember to visit www.echoesoflife.org for more information on our support groups, coaching classes, and upcoming events like us GRISPA. And also, we hope to see you again next time. And may you find grace in the midst of grief. Thank you so much.
Mm.
I love you.
Love you. Thank you.